We're good to go? All right. I'm going to call to order the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for April 7th, 2021 for the town of Zionsville. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right.
Pledge allegiance
To
to the
To
flag
the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So can you hear me on this? Am I coming all right?
Yes.
I can hear you, Larry.
Okay. All right, so I guess the first thing we're going to do is go through and do the approval of the previous meeting minutes.
Certainly happy to do attendance.
Correct, please do attendance.
Next. Okay. Mr. Mundy,
Present.
Ms. Campins,
Present.
Mr. Jones,
Present.
Mr. Lake, Mr. Wolf.
Okay.
3-0. You have 3 members here, so looking for unanimous actions tonight. Anything else will be indecisive.
I guess the next thing we do want to do is approve the March 3rd, 2021 draft meeting minutes for review and approval. Anybody have any questions, cause for concern? Can I get a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Second.
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 All in favor, say aye.
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 Dwayne, do we need any kind of roll call on that, or that's fine?
I think we should, since we have a couple people by Zoom, just to be fair.
Okay.
Okay, roll call. Mr. Mundy,
Aye.
Ms. Campins,
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye. Okay, so I guess the first item we want to do is suspend the rules regarding notice, and that is that we'll accept.
To accept notice by regular mail instead of certified mail.
Okay.
We've done that for several months just to accommodate some pandemic issues.
Okay. Any concern? We have an approval for same.
We're looking for a motion.
A motion.
I'd move to approve the use of regular mail versus registered mail due to
I
pandemic.
second. I second that.
All right, we'll do a roll call. Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Campins,
Aye.
Mr. Mundy.
Aye.
So the first item we have on the docket is 2021-05 DSV C. Henry. Project address 2346 US 421. My understanding they have requested a continuance. Is that correct?
We have a continuance for 30 days.
Okay.
Next question is probably, what is your May meeting date?
All right.
May 5th.
Can we get any discussion regarding the continuance? Can we get a motion to continue it to May 5th?
I motion to continue to May 5th.
And a second?
Second.
Who's going to do the roll call?
Roll call. Ms. Campins,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Mundy.
Aye.
The next we have the Cohatch project at 75 North Main. We have 2 petitions. Do you want to go ahead and let's do them separately, since one regards the nature of the construction and development, and the other is regarding more or less a variance of parking. So the first one we'll hear is 2021-06-SE, the Cohatch CRVD Zionsville LLC for 75 North Main. Speaking on behalf of the organization is And name and address, please.
Misha Rabinovich, lawyer with offices at 1 Indiana Square, Suite 400 in Indianapolis. You mind if I remove my mask to speak?
Please do.
It's okay.
Yeah, I would, yeah, for
I'll
purposes
keep it
of
on.
the whole world,
I'll take the
Make your
silence
microphone
as
closer.
a
Make
sign
your
that I should-
microphone closer.
that I should keep it on. No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Jones, and board members online and those present here. This project involves the property known as the Sanctuary at Main and Poplar, most recently used as Nancy Noel's art studio, gallery, and a special event space. The space already includes a full commercial kitchen and bar area. As you probably know, the building's history dates back to 1854, when it was originally a church, and it was rebuilt in 1895, so it has quite a history. In addition to being a church, the building has been used as a gathering space for the community, office space, and retail space. Unfortunately, the building has been vacant for the past 6 years. I think Michael Cosine, who's here in the audience, and you may hear from the current owner, would tell you that unless they can move forward with the Cohatch project, preservation of the building really is in serious jeopardy, and it is a treasure that we think should be maintained. Cohatch is proposing to repurpose the building as co-working space and a restaurant with an outdoor patio. Cohatch's investment in the project and in the village here on this project will exceed $3 million when it's done. We're here tonight seeking approval of variance of development standards for parking. And then the second part is the outdoor patio to permit outdoor seating in the urban village district. I understand we're going to take that petition separately, although I won't provide the same background again for that one. I think you'll find in the materials that we've submitted that we may not have satisfied everyone, but as you can see from the support we've received from neighborhood stakeholders like the Zionsville Chamber of Commerce and Z-Works, John Watkins and Chris Watkins, and I intended to introduce John. He's on the line, and you may hear from him too. He's one of the principals of Cohatch. They've worked very hard to engage with the community to understand concerns that were raised, reach agreements on parking and other matters that will benefit the village, particularly as it relates to the economic development and impact aspect of the project. It's important as we look at the use proposed for the building that we take a look at what co-working space is. That may be a term that's not readily familiar to folks. It's very different than your typical office environment. Co-working space is not like the buildings you see downtown Indianapolis where people go and work from 8 to 5. They're more transient. They come and go, they share space. At Cohatch, which is unique, members purchase membership interests that permit them to use the facility on an as-needed basis, whether it's to find a quiet office space for an afternoon or conference room space. They have all of the modern technology that office users require and that are included in all of their facilities. Cohatch takes the co-working concept to even more of a niche in the market because they focus on the real estate aspect by looking for buildings that have some historic character and have unique traits just like this building. And they really focus on suburban submarkets like Zionsville. They are out of Columbus, Ohio, and they're in and around the suburbs of Columbus. They've got a facility in Noblesville And the most recent one here locally is just west of Broad Ripple, where they're rehabbing an old church for their use. They focus on the uniqueness of the building, not only on the exterior by improving the exterior, but the interior spaces. Just wanted to show you a few slides of some of their other locations where they've incorporated artwork and other unique characteristics in their conference room space and other office spaces that make these attractive for office users. Here's another look. You can see some of the technology that's incorporated into all of their conference room space. Cohatch is also unique because it's community-minded and mission-based. They understand the importance of engaging with the community. They often refer to their business model as Town Hall 2.0 because their locations are places where people come to work, but also sometimes meet for non-for-profit organizational meetings and other similar activities. And they're important. They become important parts of the community. Their co-working model extends beyond just the office use. They have other benefits that are afforded to members, rentals in vacation home in Florida. They have some of their locations have theater rooms and other amenities that can be used by their members. Here's a listing of some of their locations in, primarily Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, most recently entering the Tampa, Florida market. Getting to the Zionsville concept that they are proposing for this location. Here you see an aerial of the site. It's again at the southeast corner of Main and Poplar. There you see the proposed covered patio area and the outline of the building. Here are just to refamiliarize yourself some photographs of the existing structure. This is the site plan. Just a couple things to point out. The site does have parking challenges. That's no secret. There are 4 parking spaces included in the site plan behind the building. The parking calculation under the ordinance is included there for the office use and the restaurant use. Under the ordinance, 34 parking spaces would be required and 4 spaces are provided. And I will get into the mitigation plan that we have worked very hard on here shortly. But first, just to walk you around the floor plans for the building. This is the floor plan for the main floor. There's already, as I said, a bar and commercial kitchen that they intend to repurpose. So the restaurant there is on the south portion of the building. And then the northern portion of that first floor is co-working space. And then there's a mezzanine level with additional co-working office and conference room space, sort of an open staircase atrium concept, get to the mezzanine. And then in the lower level, the basement level, there's additional co-working office space. As the Cohatch folks looked closely at the site, they really try to engage and understand what the history of the community in which they're going, so that when they go to preserve the building, it fits in context. So they've done quite a lot of research. What they hope to accomplish is to recognize and acknowledge the historical significance of the sanctuary building, also a kind of a nod to Nancy Noel and her important relationship to the building as well. So here you see the rendering of the building as proposed to be built with the outdoor patio there. That's really at the southwest corner, maintaining the church elements of the building, including the stained glass and the steeple and bell tower there on the north side. Here's a closer look at the outdoor outdoor patio and the ADA ramp that would be on the south side of the building. Here's a shot just looking due, looking head on to the building. And then here's some interior shots. They really spent a lot of time trying to design something that is unique and will be attractive to village residents. This is the first floor entryway. And then looking further at the first floor entryway and some of the art attributes that they intend to include. Here you can start to see in this picture, in the right-hand shot, the staircase leading to the mezzanine level, which really is a interesting feature. And here you are at the top of the stairs on that mezzanine level leading to additional space. And I think the shot on the right, representative of the stained glass features incorporated into the building. So turning to the request specifically for the parking variance, again, the site plan provides for 4 spaces, 30 spaces are required under the ordinance. It's important as we analyze the parking needs for the property, we look at a number of different issues. First, co-working space, as I said, is not like traditional office space. People come and go. People aren't coming from 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. That's just not how it works. Most of Cohatch's locations and their experience tells them, and this location is no different, that many of their users are members of the immediate community and often walk or ride their bicycles to the office. And the other thing is the office and the restaurant use are complementary. That's in modern terms a traditional mixed use where you have complementary uses that conserve parking, and that's what we have here. We've provided in this graphic some statistics from another location showing that peak uses of the office space is really mid to late afternoon, and then peak use of the restaurant is in the evening, as you might imagine, at 6 o'clock or later. So the uses are complementary. If you break down the request by use, the office component requires 13 spaces, and so that's just a 9-space variance, and the restaurant component requires 21 spaces, so that's a 17-space component. We've worked very hard, though, on a parking mitigation plan that we believe appropriately addresses the parking needs for the site. In addition to the on-site parking, I think we identified in the materials, there's significant on-street parking. We counted over 100 spaces, which of course everybody has to share and use, and those are not always available and open. In addition to that, Cohatch has agreed to enter into a lease of the building at 95 South Elm Street from Bob Harris, which is a couple blocks away, to lease 29 spaces behind his building. It's our understanding that Mr. Harris intends to improve that lot, which may accommodate more spaces. There was reference in the staff report, which is the first time we learned that Mr. Harris had apparently committed it's either those spaces or something close to it to a petitioner here a couple of years ago. Mr. Price, representative of the owner of that petitioner, is here in the audience. He can certainly speak to it. We've had a chance to talk, and we've talked to Mr. Harris about it. I think that our understanding is that likely very little chance of conflict when there are large events, and that lot will need to be used by both parties, notwithstanding it's Cohatch's intent, and John Watkins, who's on the line, can speak to this, to work cooperatively with everybody, including the Price family, to deal with any issues that come up. When we learned of the issue, we went back to Mr. Harris to ask him about it, and he had indicated also that he owns another lot at 106th and Main, which is not quite as convenient, but certainly can be used for valet parking if needed. So he's committed that opportunity as well. We have included in the materials, and it is a commitment that petitioner is making, that it will employ a valet service to accommodate high volume parking in the evenings. Should it be needed on the weekends or for special events. That's a service that I think has become pretty common in various areas around the north side of Indianapolis and certainly downtown. Mr. Watkins has also spoken with other area businesses and folks that have offered to provide for additional parking if it's needed, and he can speak to that. I guess, Mr. Jones, leave discussion of the outdoor patio until later, although it was really going to be a brief part of the presentation here. I guess what I would like to wrap up with is the support that we've received, the materials in your file, letters of support from various neighbors, and then working closely with Chamber of Commerce. Their letter of support is in your materials. And then Z-Works, which we think is an incredible opportunity to work together, mutually beneficial uses. The parties have met and entered into a collaborative agreement that we think will benefit really both parties. Z-Works with some additional office space and some service opportunities. And so that looks like a wonderful partnership as well. Just to close, virtually any use that goes into this property, if this historic building is going to be preserved, and we think it should be, absolutely, is going to require a parking variance, and that even includes a church. And the uses that we're proposing here are compatible and really make an ideal reuse of the building. Bringing this modernized use to the village where entrepreneurs will come to office, frequent area businesses, have lunch, buy jewelry, what have you, and support all the other retail businesses cannot be understated. So we think that we've established the findings of fact required for the ordinance, particularly the final finding of fact related to the practical application of the ordinance and the undue hardship. I think that it's unanimous, nearly unanimous, that preservation of this 1850s building is important, and its location on the property really is what creates the hardship here. So with that, we'd ask for your approval of the variance. Happy to answer any questions.
Couple things just to clarify. So what is before us currently that we're going to discuss and hear commentary on is the parking variance portion of the petition, which is different than the one I read off before. So it's 2021-07-DSV. That just get us all back on right track, because I think I read the other one at the beginning.
Right, you have two different petitions, you have the special exception, the variance, if you'd like to address the variance first.
We'll do the variance first for the parking. That's
Very
fine. I need to get the order correct. Do we talk amongst ourselves and then ask for public commentary? It's always easier when you're on the other end.
Certainly, look, you've had the presentation here. Certainly turn now to the public to see if there's anybody online. I don't have the benefit of that view shed here. Certainly IT or other members could be on video and wanting to speak, and certainly members of the actual audience here could be looking to speak as well, in favor or in opposition.
Okay, so she will ask for any people who are waiting to comment either in support or in opposition to this variance.
My name is Michael Rossi.
Please up.
All right, thanks. My name is Michael Cosine. Nancy Noel was my mother, and I'm now essentially the owner seller of this building. As you may know, and that Misha commented on, we've been trying for the last 6 years, my mother and I, to sell this building. I'm a real estate developer. I come from a real estate family, so it was my area of expertise. And the last 6 years, it's been a dark building, been a dark hole on Main Street, frankly. And I grew up in Zionsville, lived here my whole life. And it was hard to see, especially when, as anybody who's been in the sanctuary knows, the love and money that my mother put into that building and really transformed it to when it was, I think, a furniture store at one point. So I hear about this company, Cohatch, looking around Indianapolis and surrounding areas. And when I started to look into that company, and at this point, you know, I'm at kind of my wits end here, coming from a development family. I don't know what the strength, you know, what's going to happen to this building, especially now that my mother's passed and it's a massive financial obligation. And I'd hate to see something happen to it after all the love she put in. I hear about Cohatch and I go and I start researching this company and I see the strength of the company and how well organized they are and what they've been able to accomplish in a short amount of time. But then I noticed that they also have a tremendous creative strength. And then what really sold me on them before I ever called them was how they become a partner in the community. As Misha also touched on, is that they are not just a business that opens and sits back. They get involved, and they, as with their partnership, with potential partnership with ZWorks and all the effort they've put in to solve some of these issues, was no surprise from what I found. And that's when I called and I brought them to Zionsville. They had not known about the sanctuary. They did not know about Zionsville. And so I was very impressed with the company, and being, like I said, a lifelong resident of Zionsville, I thought that they would be another citizen here. And I think as coming from as a real estate professional, seeing what Zionsville would like to grow, but also keep its quaint boutique drawl that is Zionsville, I think that this is a wonderful opportunity for them. And I think it would be a great partnership. So I wanted to come and obviously show my support. And if anybody has any questions for me, please, but I think this would be a great use and the only possible way that I can see right now of preserving that building. And I would personally hate to see anything happen to that building. And there could be other opportunities that I would have. And frankly, I'm losing money on the sale of this building because I think this is the right thing to do. And I mean that. So thank you.
I've just got a couple of questions about the structure itself while you're there. So we understand there's a commercial kitchen there in the rear. And then the area that is currently being shown is like sort of bar and seating. Is that space kind of exist currently?
Yes.
Okay. So then the Cohatch, their space will start there, kind of that, let's call it a demising wall and head north, basically. So they'll also be using a portion of the basement underneath as well, but that'll be mostly, so is the basement area all for, will it be used for the restaurant as well, or more just
co-working.
just co-work seating space? And then, so the North High, the brewing company, they won't actually be brewing on site.
Right. No,
Correct.
They won't. That's right.
Okay. So it'll be mostly just restaurant and then their use, and then obviously to be able to get the outside. Okay. Do we have any other members from the public that want to chime in? Okay. Can you put them up for us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ms. Alonis, please say your name and give us your address and please proceed.
My name is Sally Zalonis. I live at 40 South 3rd Street in Zionsville. My husband and I have lived here for over 23 years. I applaud Cohatch for their respect for the historic property at the sanctuary. We've always admired it. We've watched over the years as Nancy Noel undertook the restoration. I can only imagine the bills that she took on in terms of repainting that building alone. I've looked at the letters of support, and I just would call to mind, and it's good to see that other restaurants are in support of the project. I just remember a conversation a couple of months ago as the Redevelopment Commission, I believe it was looking at awarding some funding to one of the restaurants on Main Street, and the comments made about parking and the discussion that's gone on now for years about employees. I know that Drew Cogan brought it to everyone's attention that there are restaurant employees that park on Main Street and take up the parking spots for visitors to Zionsville or Zionsville residents that are eating out in the evening. I think this will continue to be an issue, and I would only hope that the chamber and the new restaurant would continue to ask their employees to park in further locations. Certainly 106th and Main Street is a further location for sure. I only hope that the parking can accommodate all the restaurants that are here. We certainly enjoy being able to walk to them, but there are many in the outer parts of Zionsville, I know, that drive in to use the restaurants. I'm not against the project. I think the historic aspects of this building far outweigh squabbling over parking spaces. I think it will be of concern for the hair salon that's across the street during the day because they have limited parking. And certainly for those residents on Main Street who park in front of their house currently, but and even on the side streets. But I think that the historic nature of the building itself is really a major attraction for people here in Zionsville. So I think it's a difficult decision, but I'm in support of maintaining this beautiful building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matt, you want to come up?
My name's Matt Price. I live at 485 West Sycamore Street in Zionsville, Indiana. I've lived here for a little over 40 years. My parents and our family businesses own 58 North Main, 60 North Main, and 110 North Main. So we have the three properties with the exception of Bob Goodman's store, all immediately across the street from the sanctuary. We're very much in support of the project. The word that we liked as a family and as business owners in the community from the letters of support was vibrancy. We think that downtown needs more vibrancy, more investment, and that investment can be used to help solve the parking problems. And as Mr. Jones has noted from time to time, having a parking problem isn't always a bad thing. We agree with that. We agree very strongly with that philosophy. We even have a competing enterprise in the Zionsville Underground as an event center. We're still very much in favor of it because we think there's room for more. There's room for more vibrancy. And I'd like to congratulate Mr. Cosine. I think he's done an excellent job of recruiting a fine business partner to the town of Zionsville. We had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Watkins, and I've had conversations with Misha. They've all been very professional and very seem like people that we'd want to welcome to our community. So I just wanted to be on record that we support the variance and the special exception requested, and appreciate the opportunity to speak this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else from the public out there, either here or online? Do we have any more online? Okay.
My name is Jerry Cosine. I own the Ford Center Shopping Center where the CVS is. We built it about 29 years ago. I happen to be Michael's father, so I obviously have self-interest here. We have gone to great pains over the years to keep that property fresh. We make a big deal out of our retention pond. We want to continue to exemplify the vibrance and the currentness of what Zionsville should be doing. This is another effort, a responsible effort to do just that. And I think that parking is always an issue. As a 50-year developer in central Indiana, the issues relating to parking are really a good problem to have that needs to be solved permanently. But if you're going to have a vibrant Main Street, you have to address it. And the only answer is you've got to come up with a plan. So all I'm saying, as a property owner, as a taxpayer, as somebody who has developed in your community, I hope that continues. There's a lot of foresight that sits in this room, and I hope everybody can get together and support these kinds of efforts. Thank you.
There are no other members. Do we have any discussion amongst the board members? Questions, comments?
I've got a couple of questions. This would probably be a question for Misha, I guess. But how does this contrast or compare with something like Z-Works? Is this a successful Z-Worker that ultimately needs to move up in terms of the office space that they might use on full-time or part-time basis? Or is it very similar to Z-Works in what it does?
I think that's a great question for, I could try to answer, but Mr. Watkins of Cohat is on the line. Could we turn his mic on? And so he'd be the best person to answer that, one of the owners. John.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to present tonight. And as has been said, we're very honored to have this opportunity to be a part of the Zionsville community and a chance to preserve and enhance this beautiful building at 75 North Main Street that's been such an important part of the community for in its current state since 1895, and with the history going back to 1854. I actually spent an hour with Ralph Stacy 2 weeks ago, and he gave me a great history lesson on it. He had spent hours researching, and it just further deepened our understanding and appreciation for the history and the people involved with that building. To answer your question, Mr. Mundy, Z-Works, as we understand it, and I've had meetings with Vicki, with Paul, and with the others, is they really have three roles that three missions. One is as an incubator of new businesses, as an accelerator of existing businesses, and then providing co-working or shared space for these ultra small startup type businesses. At Cohatch, we are not an incubator or an accelerator. That's not in our mission. We actually have incubators and accelerators that operate out of our other facilities. And we create that platform for people that create the new businesses and help small businesses grow. We allow them, we provide the space for them to do that so they don't have to worry about their own real estate. And then we provide an ecosystem with other startups and professional services firms that allow for connections and people to come together, both to do business and share ideas and to have community. So to the degree that there is overlap, it would be in the area of co-working. And we've talked about that with Vicki and, as included in our submittal, and as Misha referenced, we have an agreement in principle of how we would work together going forward that would allow ZWorks to focus primarily on their mission of incubating new companies and accelerating existing companies in their growth, and that we would, be their real estate platform, their office platform, so that they could, focus on the things that they do really well.
Thank you. A second question would be about the restaurant portion of the use of space there. Is that space leased out to a group that designs and builds and runs restaurants, or is that part of what your company does itself?
At North High, we don't have an equity interest in North High, but in other locations where we're expanding, there's a good chemistry between the North High ownership and the Cohatch ownership. And so we have invited them in certain locations like Zionsville, like Circle Center, and there'll be other locations. We just announced 2 new locations in Tampa, Florida yesterday, and North High Brewing will be going there with us. And so there's just a good working relationship between the ownership of the 2 groups. And so they would be a tenant. We don't call them tenants, we call them members within the space. I'm not sure if that answers your question or not.
That does it. So they're experienced in the restaurant business, and that's what they do, and that's what they bring to a space
Correct.
like this.
We do not want to be in the restaurant business, and so we are looking for those that are expert in that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Watkins, just a quick question. Staff-wise, what does Cohatch use on a regular daily basis staff-wise?
Yeah, in terms of our office offering, it's we have 1 employee that works Monday through Friday and staffs the location. The offices are available 24/7 to members, and we have a key fob system where members, prior to 8 a.m. and after 5 p.m. and on the weekends, they just fob in, and we're on the honor system. Of course, we have the appropriate security in place, and we've been in operation since 2016, and that system has worked very well for us. The restaurant would have anywhere from 6 to 15 people on staff, depending on day of week and time of day.
When you speak about the members, they have use of the space. Would these be members even if they're from out of state? If somebody came in that were members in Tampa and they came to Zionsville, would they be able to use that space as well?
Yes, if you're a member in Zionsville and you happen to be in Tampa on vacation or business and you want to use one of our facilities, you have equal access to a facility in Tampa or Columbus or Cleveland or wherever else we have a location.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I have a couple comments. Churches are interesting pieces of real estate. They are purpose-built, which makes them just terrible to try to ever convert into any other use. Churches are worse than golf courses when it comes to pieces of real estate to own. They are the bottom of the barrel because they were purpose-built, and oftentimes they are given a certain amount of special exceptions, but then they end up being kind of the mainstay piece of real estate for just about any town square or city you go through. You see the churches, everybody, regardless of your feelings about religion one way or the other, churches have always been amazing pieces of architecture. And when you're in their spaces and the things they do, downtown Indianapolis on College or St. Joseph Brewery. And I watched that building for 30 years languish and go through multiple owners trying. And, finally, as St. Joseph, it got to use. And it's a great place to sit in. You can't hear your neighbor across the table from you speak. The acoustics are horrible, but, that's the nature. They're just tough to repurpose. But I don't think the main street of Zionsville would be the same without that piece of real estate there, without that look. Town of Zionsville does not have any kind of historic preservation protection for the parcel. And as the Cosines have spoken, it's, if a use isn't found for this, I'd hate to see what would replace it. I am not a particularly big fan of the hardy plank sided, paint and caulk apartment buildings that go up all over the place, but that is the other option. So with that said, I think it's very important we find a way to make this use work. Parking is always an issue. Like I said, and I'll say it again, if you have a parking problem, that means you have too many customers, too many visitors, too many people using your real estate. That means you have enough money to fix and take care of whatever problems are out there. When you have no parking problems, you have no customers, you have no money, and you have no viable businesses. And so to find the happy medium is always kind of tough. I appreciate all the work you've put into finding other locations for parking and being willing to try to lease same. I drove through the lot over there on Elm, is that correct? 75 Elm Street. My concern is access. It's a gravel lot in a floodplain. And if that parcel was actually ever to be, I don't quite understand some of the language I've heard, whether or not the current owner is going to go to the cost to actually develop it as a parking lot, or if that's somehow to be borne by the developers of this property. But regardless, it's the approval process is going to be bloody, let alone the cost to do it. And then when you're done, you have a parking lot that's only accessible, a snow or an ice storm, you're not getting in and out of that lot. I barely got in and out of it with my pickup truck this afternoon. So as much as I appreciate that, I'm wondering if, when it comes to the parking issue, if there isn't a better solution that the users could find some sort of, I'm thinking, access to some sort of parking pass that could be worked out with other, the issue you're going to have with the property is that, like I said, Cohatch will have one employee, the restaurant will have 10, which really only gives you a handful of people that you can actually control where they park. The rest, the people using the business, while they might like the idea of that parking lot being over there, getting them to actually go use it and hike up that hill is going to be tough. And so as much as you're going through a lot of effort to find other sources, I wonder if there isn't a better solution. I see a lot of commitment to things that are going to be expensive to develop, difficult to enforce, let alone get anyone actually to use them. And so I'm wondering if the organization, Cohatch, and the restaurants and the Cosines, if there might not be a better or other option out there that could be proposed.
I think Mr. Watkins may want to respond. I'm happy to, but I wanted to give John the opportunity. He's had the conversations with Mr. Harris, and some of the things that you mentioned on the improvement have come up. So could we, John, do you want to respond to that?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bob and I have talked. There is going to be a significant cost to develop that, to pave it and stripe it, assuming, it's able to, we get the permit to do so. We've agreed not only to lease his building, which we do not need, other than the parking spaces that are associated with it, but also share in our fair share of the development of that parking lot, to take it from its current state, pave it completely, stripe it, and make it as convenient as possible. So, that was our primary path. We felt that it met the requirements, recognizing in full all of the potential inconveniences that you mentioned. Alternatively, or I would just say, while I was in Zionsville a couple of weeks ago, either directly or indirectly, with the help of the Zionsville Chamber of Commerce, was introduced to 5 different business owners, 4 of whom who have confirmed that they would be willing to lease spots to us evenings and weekends, and 1 potentially, but I have not yet confirmed that. And for the ones that are confirmed, it's around 30 spots that are confirmed, with the potential to be more than that. My understanding is all those spots are within 300 feet of our property, and thus we would not require the variance. But we just felt having our own secure parking spaces at Mr. Harris's property was, even though it was going to cost us more, was more secure and more convenient, and is our preferred path. But if not approved, I'll start talking to these other 5 businesses and see what I can cobble together. It's just a lot of time and effort to do that, and it's going to, require other types of things that we have to solve for.
I would just only add that it seems like the Harris lot solution is a solution. It may not be the best solution. I think, John, you're saying you're certainly willing to continue to explore these other solutions, but this would permit us to move forward at this point.
So Wayne, just to make sure, as I'm reading through the staff recommendation, so do we actually have a parking plan that they provided? Am I looking at it here somehow, or?
Maybe I can comment on that, and then Wayne can chime in. But we were provided a parking plan late last night. I provided it to Wayne. Wayne, you do with it what? Okay. So you do not have it, but
No, I got this today online. So yes, I've seen this. Okay. Mr. Watkins, timing wise, Mr. Cosines, where are you guys at in the process?
We were originally supposed to close this month. Michael agreed to extend it to May 4th. Because, if this gets pushed to the next meeting, Michael's graciously agreed to extend our closing date to May 18th. And we will not close without having the parking issue settled. I would just say too, Mr. Chairman, is we've already got $70,000 or more invested in the project. We're highly committed to it. We want to do it to the point, as I mentioned earlier, to lease a building that we're never going to use just to have the parking and solve this problem.
Let me think of something. The current number of spaces that are required for this are what? 34?
Yes.
Steve, do you guys, any other commission members have any thoughts or comments?
I think it's a great use of the facility. I agree with what you said earlier, Larry, about the old church being there. I think it is a part of Main Street. I wouldn't want to see it go away, and happy to see a project that would bring some vibrancy, maintain the look of that building. The parking is going to be a problem. You know, those things will, I think people are smart enough, they figure those things out. I don't live in the village, but I am in the village often to dine and other things. There's always places to find. You just have to walk a block or two or three. I think people will do that. The challenge with the lot that exists as a potential to solve all their traffic or all their parking needs is a tricky one. And some people will just avoid it no matter what. But I think preserving the old church, bringing business and vibrancy into that location is, in my mind, a fair trade-off.
I'll make a motion if anybody wants to have something out here to discuss. I'll move that docket number 2021-07-DSV, a development standards variance for a reduction in the required amount of off-street parking in the village, and I'm sorry, in the urban village business district, VBD, be reduced from the required 34 spaces to 12 parking passes to be acquired on existing parking lots within the village.
Is it?
Question
Ask a question.
Sure.
is, do you find that preferable, Larry, to the plan that they have made using what is truly a difficult place to park in certain weather conditions? But you think that reducing the number of required spaces in more preferable locations is better than accepting a sufficient number of parking spaces in a difficult place to park?
My concern with the parking plan for the redevelopment of this lot is it's number one in a floodplain. Two, the existing lot, the majority of it is gravel. So the cost and the approval process to get that done, and the time, you know, it's going to be another year. If we make this project dependent upon this parking that's being provided, nothing's happening for another year. As well as even once it's done, if it can be done, just the access to it is so difficult up and down that drive. I appreciate all the work they put into and the willingness to agree to this. I just don't see it viable. It just isn't a viable option. As much as everybody wants to be very optimistic about it and talk about it, I just don't see it happening. And then that puts us into a bind of either delaying the project, which I don't think anybody wants to do, or, finding ourselves back in this. The reason I bring up the parking passes, as vague as that may sound, it gives the owners of the property and the developers the opportunity to go negotiate with the other adjoining property owners and find something. And then those spaces, at least they will have the option of directing employees to use, which is typically the biggest complaint we ever hear about any use. It's not so much the customers, it's always the employees parking on the street or doing something this. So I'm hoping this is, while it may sound a little vague and a little open, it's something that could be reasonably obtained. And if everyone wants to talk about that outside of us for a minute, it would be, and the final piece is, town of Zionsville has no towing company that works in here, do they? I mean, if you really want to get somebody towed out of your lot, can you get it done? Because you typically have to have that sign posted. You have to have a contract with the towing company to get that done. And you're talking to somebody that tows people out of their lots on a regular basis. And yes, I have the signs and I have the contracts, and yeah, you go. So
can you define parking passes?
exactly. It is just that vague. It is something that you can come back and say that we've met with neighbor X, Y, and Z, and they have 3 and 4 and 3, and should be able to do that math, but 5, what do I need more? But or 2. And that way we at least have some ability for the operators to direct people to park somewhere. And because the clientele and the customers, and even people going to the restaurants, it's not going to happen that they're going to go park down at the bottom of that hill ever. And they're going to do just like I do whenever we come over. We always like to park close. Do we check the Zionsville lots? And then we work our way down the street. I've never not gone to a Zionsville restaurant because I couldn't find parking. I've never missed the 4th of July because I couldn't find parking. I've never, the Christmas in the village, anything. You always find parking. You just maybe have to walk a little farther. So the goal is just to find a way to address what is typically the first level of concern we hear at these meetings. And that is if the operators can find a way for at least staff to be controlled.
Let's maybe hear from Mr. Watkins on that, if we could.
I want to thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I understand the proposal would be to reduce from 34 to 12 the number of spots required in order to, and then have them defined as passes and then go from there.
Correct.
I can accept that. We can work with that.
And Mr. Chairman, just to provide maybe just some additional color and direction to, I think, where your thoughts are going. I mean, our zoning ordinance here in Zionsville is structured around specific land uses and specific ratios. It does not anticipate a co-working situation where a point of destination business is in fact bringing potential customers to Zionsville that might occupy this space for 2 hours and visit 3 other businesses in the village. They could potentially ride share in, they could potentially do other mechanisms to visit this facility. So we simply don't have an ordinance that anticipates this kind of land use. And certainly while the creativity that the petitioner has provided this evening is an effort to comply with the ordinance, what the board is supporting is a deviation from the ordinance, supporting a walking distance that's potentially beyond what the ordinance says, more than 300 feet. That's these parking passes securing these 12 off-street parking spaces somewhere. I would define the geographical area as the commercial area of the village, whatever is zoned appropriately that supports the commercial activities in the downtown, all the way down to South Village. So I think that's what's happening here, and certainly as staff, we would look to see proof of those certificates or passes at the time of the request for a temporary certificate of occupancy, providing that very clear wording. As in fact, we typically see a TCO being requested prior to a full CO.
So do I need to modify the variance or the motion to put a 500-foot radius on it, something like that? Because I know we had to at least define the area somewhat.
To me personally, you have a business model that does not follow the zoning ordinance for very specific reasons. The ordinance anticipates providing some convenience for that person who is visiting that business. In this particular case, that's not the business model. I would encourage just structuring it on anything that is zoned for the village business district, or anything that is actually under what the commercial parameters, which would include South Village. South Village is some of it is, I believe it is VBD. There might be something down that way that's a B3. I know the Dairy Queen's B3, for example. So you have some properties that are not VBD, but certainly there are your commercial entities that are in the downtown. I think there's more flexibility that is necessary than a defined numerical dimension.
Okay, so do I need to change the motion to list within the, am I going to codify it with a zoning district? Is that what we're?
I think one defensible way to clarify this is to define it as the boundaries as enforced by the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee, because they are the arbiters of a program, for the Architectural Enhancement Program, and their boundaries are coterminous with any commercial property that's in the village, and actually any property that's adjacent that's also utilized commercially. That'd be one option if you were so inclined.
No, because that covers multiple types of properties, multiple types of zonings, and gives them the option to work with different groups to find a solution to the, and I understand the parking pass is not the greatest descriptive term in the world, but I think you're getting the general gist of it at some point.
It infers control, exclusive control of a parking location, I think is what you intend. It's the word passes that is problematic, but I think.
Do you have a better phrase you would like me to?
Parking spaces, exclusive use of X number of parking spaces.
Okay. So if I guess it's my motion, so I can modify it, correct?
Before you modify it, Larry, what's the number, where does the number 12 come from?
My assumption is the restaurant will probably have around 10 or 11 employees at any given shift for something of this size. The co-working staff said they'd have one. And what I'm looking at is that the company, the businesses have the best opportunity. The manager of the restaurant, the manager of the co-hatch is going to hear the complaint about parking. So at least they can state to whoever's complaining about the parking, hey, our employees are parking here, here, and here, and we tell them to do so. It's just trying to get to some level of enforceability. And that's, and I think, Steve, you've been in this and you've heard mostly the people complain about, most of the residents complain about employees of various businesses parking in front of their house all day long. That's out of, Drew Kogan is, famous for coming in here and explaining things going on in the village. And that's usually one of his number one core complaints is about, it's not customers and clients and people new to the village coming in and parking in the streets. It's just the people who are working there, just because it's, they get there early. It's the closest to it. There they sit and their car sits there all day. And it's not good for the other businesses. So trying to figure out some way, like I said, just the matter of trying to find a way that we can have the operators of these businesses somewhat control who's parking where.
Okay, I understand that, but I think the requirements in the ordinance sets aside parking because restaurants do in fact bring in a significant number of people and vehicles at certain times, and that it is because of that that we have this, not because of the employees, but because of the patrons of the restaurants that are coming in to use it, and it provides some space. Now, the employees that park there, okay, they have taken up that space, but I think that's the intention of the ordinance. And 10 or 12 just gets you the people that are going to be there every day anyhow. So now you have the patrons coming in. Where are they going to park? They're going to search for parking places, and there are places around. But I think the ordinance intent is that there is some space that is there for the sake of those patrons who are coming in. So, and I don't think this solves any of that. Now, I would buy into the past concept, but the number 12 to me does not satisfy what needs to be taken care of.
Like I said, I'll drop back to my original statement. It may seem a bit of an arbitrary number, but the idea was to get spaces that the venues could actually control and direct people to, and then know they were there. You are correct, yes, but that's the biggest issue with any type of parking situation. Broad Ripple put in a multi-story paid garage down there. Nobody uses it because it's paid, and so the businesses still bear the brunt of all the customers parking in Broad Ripple. Once again, I watched Mass Avenue for the last 30 years, and they've actually put meters in up and down the street, which once again that controls. And so that's the other option for the town of Zionsville is to go to parking meters, something to help create a turnover. Once again, the reason, just like what Wayne was talking about earlier, the reason I was interested in cutting the number from 34 to 12 is because, one, the nature of the core business, the co-hatch space, their clientele is going to be a varied group. It'll be people, if anything, COVID has taught us that people really don't like to be at home, and they really don't like working at home, because you actually get less done than when you have a dedicated space where you can go work and come. That's kind of the co-hatch, the co-working models is that people actually have a certain preference to have a spot to go to work. Yes, the restaurant is going to add space, but once again, when we look at the history and intensity of use of this structure at this location, I think the restaurant is actually a downgrade of the intensity of use that this parcel, this property, this church has had on the town of Zionsville. So what we're getting caught up in is we have a 170-year-old structure that we've now got new zoning, and it's created new parking requirements for a structure that 170 years ago never had to comply with any of it. Hence the reason there's only 4 spaces. And that's really the situation we have here. Once again, I'll go back and say it. You can grind that building up, put it in dumpsters real easy, and build a building on that site that meets all your parking requirements and strips all the culture out of the town. And if that's the other option that's laying out there, and I know it, I understand it. I've made that pitch in front of different commissions, and usually they swat me away. But in our situation in the town of Zionsville, we have no protections for this property. Hence, I think the bigger burden we have is to find a way to get it to work. And that's kind of the method of the madness of what I'm proposing here, is try to find something that it's an improvement of the situation, and it is something that is manageable.
Can I make one comment on Mr.
Sure.
Mundy's? I want to make one comment, Mr. Mundy, on your point, which I think was a very good one, because you're getting at sort of the basis for the ordinance. And I think, Wayne, you commented on that the ordinance really doesn't It doesn't deal with co-working. It doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't deal as well with mixed use. But when you break down what the ordinance requires for the different uses, so for the office space, which is primarily a daytime use, it requires 13 spaces for that amount of square footage, which is just a 9-space variance from the 4 provided. So the 12 that Mr. Jones is proposing would more than accommodate that variance if you break it down by use. And then the restaurant component requires 21 spaces, which is a 17-space variance from the 4 provided. The 12 doesn't quite cover the 17, but it comes pretty close. And again, you know, as you pointed out, I think Mr. Mundy, and I agree, you always look for the closest spot. And if you got to park a couple blocks away, that's what you do to go to the restaurant I'm talking about, not to park your car all day for the office. So I guess that's what I would argue to you is another basis to support what Mr. Jones is proposing.
Well, Larry, what I'm saying is that I don't want to see that anything happen with that building either. I think the recommendation that the petitioners put before us is worthy of coming to fruition. But I think that asking them to find 12 parking spaces is not sufficient. Mr. Watkins, maybe you can respond to this, but I think you had said that you had some contact with other business owners who had offered up that there might be space available that, and I guess if you can hazard a guess at what the number of those spaces might be, it gives at least me some indication that we can come closer to a respectable number of parking places to feel more comfortable that we're not going to have some great space there for restaurant and co-sharing of office space, and find people parking 6 blocks away and unhappy about it and decide that they don't want to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mundy. Again, 5 businesses. I've spoken to some directly. Others I've heard from through the business advocacy group of the Zionsville Chamber of Commerce. Based on my calculations, there's around there are 33 spots to be precise. Now, I have not engaged in any kind of negotiation or commercial discussion, so I don't know if people, and all of these would be evenings and weekends. None of these would be during the day. The current owners of these businesses need their spots, weekday 8 to 5. So it's evening, weekends, and I don't know if they want $1 a day or $1,000 a day, and so that could make that number 33 go to 0 or keep it at 33. And I just didn't have time to enter into those negotiations before this hearing.
Understand. If it goes to $1,000 a day, Mr. Watkins, I wouldn't take it.
Good advice.
Might be worth more than $1, but not 1,000. And I guess my point, Larry, is that I would like to see us get to a point where we feel much more comfortable about it. I think there's complete comfort with what's proposed for the building itself, at least in my mind. I'm completely comfortable with that. I would like, though, that we have something a little more definitive in the way of parking, and the number 12 just doesn't ring true with me.
Okay.
If I could say something, the lot that is proposed to lease for the parking If all the employees could park in this lot and the co-share workers, I believe, just like all of us, when we go downtown, we find the closest place we can park. You know, I don't think that people for the restaurant will probably park down in this lot, but we'll, continue to drive around to find something close, just like the rest of us. But during the day, and the employees and the people that are using the co-share office, we could direct them to use this lot. And that would keep the employees from parking in front of owners' homes. And yes, there's additional parking for overflow for the restaurant, if they are looking for it. But I agree as proposed as well that
Yeah,
this is viable.
you said the concern I have about the lot is just that the constructability. Will this thing actually ever exist? And I don't want to get this group all. I mean, yeah, enough time and money, anything can be accomplished, but I just, parking lots in floodplains are just difficult to get done. And
Is
I
it
don't,
being used as constructed?
huh?
Isn't it being used as constructed?
No. Well, what's down there is part asphalt, part gravel, and then what's shown in my drawing is the area that's still grass being parking lot. So my concern with this is it's not like there was an existing parking lot down there that's going to get seal coated and restriped and used. Somebody's got to build that. And I don't know if Mr. Harris is building it or Mr. Watkins or whatever, but my concern is if we tie the approval of this to this and this doesn't happen, or what happens? And that's why I'm trying to figure out a way to come to a different solution that just allows the process to move forward. And that's, if I understand what Steve's talking about is that, it's a slippery slope of how do we allow other, okay,
Mr. Chairman,
right, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. If I may propose something.
Please.
Currently, the way it's operating at 75 South Elm is there's 23 spots that are in that partially gravelled and paved lot. Our proposal was to add 16 with the paving of that area. The 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, the two buildings require 10 offices per code. So that leaves 13 spots. We would still be willing to lease that building. It's a couple grand a month for us to lease that building. That would be used for the co-working, we call them community managers, who's the Monday through Friday daytime associate who works there. And then for the restaurant employees, that would be their parking, and they'd be required to park there unless it's unsafe, due to snow and ice. We would certainly could commit to that, and we can control that, and would not require any further approvals by the town of Zionsville for any development on that. And then I would, in good faith, negotiate, say, another 8 spots with, at reasonable market rates for evening and weekend parking spaces. That gets us to 21, which is our parking, the number under the calculation for the restaurant use. Those would clearly be within 300 feet. I think out of 33, I could find 8 that get us to that number.
Are you thinking, Larry, or are you on mute?
A little bit of both.
Oh, okay.
So then the motion will be revised to, approve blah, 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 based on the parking plan as submitted, that being use of the 23 spaces at, where we have 75 South Elm Street, and then petitioner finding another 8 spaces that would be leased for the exclusive use of the, and I guess we basically would co-join the property to the 75 North Main Street, not really tie it to either user, correct? Is that a better way to assemble the motion? You hear what I'm saying? In other words,
Yeah.
not tied to Cohatch, not tied to a restaurant name, but
Right.
just for the venue. So then the motion would change to, I move that doc number 2021-07-DSV, the development standard variance for the reduction in the required amount of off-street parking in the urban village business district be revised to the petitioner providing 23 spaces at a off-site location, and then securing another 8 parking spaces for the exclusive use of 75 North Main, with the following conditions. Those parking spaces be located in the area commonly known as the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee District boundaries. And 2, that the petitioner require the employees of the existing tenants to use said off-site parking spaces. That make sense?
Yes.
You-
Well, I'm not sure, Larry. I don't know if I followed all of that. But essentially you are making a motion that we would approve with the condition that those 23 spaces located at 75 North Elm be secured, and in addition, there be another, and I believe Mr. Watkins said another 8 spaces that I think would be even more restrictive than the architectural review section. I think that was within the 300 to 400 feet of the 75 North Main Street location.
Well, the reason the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee district boundaries was used is that hits basically the urban village business district and some of the other areas. So it gives them a certain amount of flexibility as to using properties that have various commercial zoning uses. And it broadens their ability. It doesn't limit it by a certain amount of footage. It basically expands it to an area that, how do I want to describe that encompasses the various commercial uses we have. So basically what it's saying is that, and make sure I'm thinking correctly, we're kind of making sure that the petitioner doesn't go to somebody's house over in the one of the neighborhoods and rent a garage. It kind of keeps it confined to the other commercial uses that we have surrounding this area. Hence why we're using that title. Correct? All right. That makes sense?
I'm not sure. Again, yes, I understand why you use that term. It does expand the boundaries of where those parking positions can be located. And that again would take it, and Wayne, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that would take it well outside of the boundary by which the ordinance says that they should be located within.
Yes, you're correct, Mr. Mundy. It's actually, that line of thinking is actually in conformance with the petitioner's proposal, which focused on potentially utilizing available parking spaces at South Village as a contributing factor in the discussion this evening.
And South Village being South Main?
South Main, which is Bub's Burgers, sub 16, Hayes River.
And again, that's
ballet.
well outside of the 300 feet that the ordinance says that these parking locations should be within. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Well, my point would be, and I don't know if Mr. Watkins knows where these businesses are located, but if they are located within that, the boundaries outlined by the ordinance, then why not put that in the motion that they be located within that boundary? Because
If I could respond, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Mundy.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is it okay if I respond?
Oh, yes, please. Yes.
Yeah, Mr. Mundy, we're certainly incented to, find spaces that are as close as possible to our location. And so, I would start, with those, the businesses that are closest and work outwards. I would appreciate to have more flexibility in case, someone, if all the businesses close, realized they had leverage and, wanted to, not extort, but just, charge above, what's fair. And so having that, a broader boundary just, I think, makes the negotiation easier. But, we have to balance that with, we want those spots as close as possible.
I agree. Your interest would be better served having them close than distant. And I guess if you got to that $1,000 parking place, I'd turn away from it too. So I'd take you at your word that it is in your best interest to find them close. And so, Larry, I'll yield to the greater boundary that you suggest and say that's a reasonable way to approach this.
All right, thank you. And also just a little background. Typically, if this was a situation where there's an existing structure or structure being proposed that was going to increase the intensity of what was previously going on there, you want that 300-foot limit in there so they can't say, well, I struck a deal with the guy at the Target lot that, over there on Michigan that they can park spots. Our situation here is that we have a structure that historically has had a much more intense use than what is currently being proposed, but it's getting still caught up in having to comply with a series of zoning rules that the property never had to comply with, even from the day it was built, hence the reason it only has these 4 spots. So the goal of this is of trying to expand the territory that the petitioners and their tenants can use and still keep it within kind of the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee's boundaries, also then keeps all the activity, in front of the group who at some point long-term has to come up with a system, a solution for the long-term parking needs for the entire town of Zionsville. So it's like keeping all the same groups there in front. So can I get a second on my motion?
I second.
We do a roll call. Any further discussion?
Only, Larry, that I will point out that even as recent as 1895, we didn't have cars, so no wonder they only have 4 places.
Well, correct. So should I include this to the 23 parking spaces, the 8, and then room for 6 horses? Carriages? Is it horse or horse and carriage, or is it horse and buggy? What's the proper name? You want to take roll?
I'll just go with the roll call.
Thanks. All right.
Ms. Campins,
Aye.
Mr. Mundy,
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye. So motion is approved. So we got beyond the parking, correct? Shall we move on to petition number 2021-06 SE basically for the expansion of the porch for the 75 North Main Street property.
Yes, thank you. I won't rehash. We've been here a long time. Maybe just would share the screen with Joe, just to kind of reorient everybody. So the second part of the request is to approve a special exception to permit the outdoor seating for the restaurant, which is only permitted by special exception in the urban village district. You see here on the screen the rendering of what we are proposing. Still leaves the full length of the sidewalk. There really is a tailor-made area there in front of the existing church building for this addition. Outdoor dining for restaurants is incredibly important, especially in this day of COVID. It's an important piece of this project, and you know, in urban settings like this, I think Matt used the term vibrancy. It does just that. It activates the sidewalk, and so with that, we're happy to answer any questions, or I'm sure Mr. Watkins would comment as well. That's all I have.
Okay. Do we have any members of the community that would like to speak on the porch addition? Nope. Any questions from any members of the commission? Comments?
Nope.
And we had no hands raised from the public? No? Okay, thank you.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I
I'll
will
make a
make a
motion.
motion, Larry.
Okay. I
Okay.
move the docket number 2021-06 SE, a special exception petition to permit outdoor seating for a restaurant in the Urban Village Business District, BVD, be approved as presented based on the staff report, exhibits, and proposed findings, and is subject to the disposition of 2021-07-DSV.
I second.
Can I get a second?
Yes, I second.
Did we lose everybody?
Yeah, Larry, I don't know why, but both Laura and I said we would make the motion. So you evidently didn't hear us.
That's okay. I'll second his.
Can you hear this, Larry?
Larry?
I don't think he can hear us. Larry,
John,
Did
can you
Monday
hear
have a
us?
birthday?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay.
all right, Larry, you can't hear us? No, I don't think he can hear us.
From John, it was second by both Steve and Laura. Thanks, John.
I think we should use thumbs up, so.
I like that, yes. Stand by, we're having audio issues.
Yeah, we're having an audio problem. Wayne, can you hear us?
I think their screen is frozen, actually.
Yeah, town hall went dead.
No,
Well,
he-
Mr. Watkins, you just have to deal with two of us now.
Yep,
Okay.
I'm sorry, guys. I just kind of blew through everything. So
that's okay.
we'll back up just a minute. Was there any more commentary that you guys or questions you would like? Okay, so then I made a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
I third.
There we go. Roll call, please, Wayne.
Certainly. Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Mundy,
Aye.
Mrs. Campins.
Aye.
So the motion is approved.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Welcome.
patience.
Sorry
Thank
about
you
all
very
this.
much.
Hard on that.
Very much
Thanks,
appreciate it.
John.
Appreciate
Thank
you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on to petition number 2021-08 DSV, N and K Savabi. I say that? 9475 White Sound Road? Is that correct?
Sure, withdrawal. Is that?
Has that one been withdrawn? Okay, sorry. All right, so then we can move on to, do we need to do anything with the withdrawal, or it's just been withdrawn?
Just recognize it.
Just recognize it, so recognized, okay. 2021-09-DSV, Sanford Trust, 8275 East 250 South.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, my name is Mike Andrioli, 1393 West Oak Street. I represent the Sanford Trust, which in essence is Jim and Carla Sanford, who've owned this 39-acre parcel of ground for many, many years and have lived on the property, built a home on the property and outbuildings on the property. Essentially, we're here, the Sanfords are moving to St. Louis to be closer to their family, and Mr. Sanford has retired from his business and they're moving there. Found a couple to buy part of the ground, 28 acres of the ground, and cannot afford at this point to buy the rest of it. But in essence, they want to move into the Sanford home and the outbuildings and have the enjoyment of that. So Mr. Sanford has agreed to go ahead and sell them the 28 plus acres, and he would keep 11 acres. We'd split the lot. They will have a common access. The access will not change for either of these two lots, assuming that they're split and you grant the variances that were requested. Essentially, what we will end up having is an unoccupied 11-acre parcel and an occupied parcel that will have buildings and accessory structures consisting of 28 plus acres. Essentially, when we looked at this, and staff was very helpful in wading us through some of the ordinance requirements, and it seemed like every time we looked, we found more things. But essentially, what we were trying to do is obviously get a 3-to-1 lot ratio approved for these particular lots. The lot is in its current form of 39 plus acres is a legal non-conforming lot of record. It doesn't meet the requirements of 3-to-1 lot ratio now. Essentially, what we're trying to do is split them, have both parcels, then receive 3-to-1 lot ratio so that they're both legal conforming lots of record. And as it relates to the larger parcel, a 28-acre parcel, that parcel has a number of outbuildings. And in order to remain in compliance with your ordinances, since the lot would be split, they would have to come back in, and in fact are here seeking variances for the accessory structure slightly exceeding the primary structure by about 1,000 square feet, and the height of the accessory structure being greater than the primary structure with regard to the barn. So we've asked for those particular variances in order to make sure that when the lot is split, that both parcels are legal conforming lots of record, and the use of the lot will carry forward for the new owners who will be occupying the 28 plus acre parcel. Time is kind of the essence with regard to this. That is not your concern necessarily, but I did want to share that with you as it relates to the fact that we're trying to get a lot of this done now in absentia because Mr. and Mrs. Sanford are back in St. Louis, but we'll be coming back and hopefully having a closing soon for the remaining acreage. I think what's going to happen in discussions with Chrissy, I think what the Sanfords hope to happen is that once the new owners get in there, they will be the purchasers of the remaining 10 acres so that they'll own it all. Can't afford to do it now, but and don't really want to commit to that at this particular point. But that would be the ultimate hope. Mr. Sanford will not be living on that property nor any relatives, so it would be for sale if in fact the people buying the 28 acres would want to buy it, and if they are not, then it would probably be put up for sale as a 10-acre building lot. The size of the lots and all of the other requirements will comply with all of your ordinances. It's in an R classification, so we don't need special exception for the 10-acre lot for a house on it. But of course, they will have to meet all the requirements with regard to the septic and well situation out there to put a new septic and well on the 10 acres if somebody would ever buy it. Again, our hope is that the proposed owners of the 28 or 29 acre parcel will go ahead and buy that at some point in time. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
So the existing drive, is there a bridge out there between these two bodies of water, or what are we seeing? Is there what is this road? Is it a road or is it a bridge or is there some sort of?
Yeah, there's a large culvert. That lake has been in existence, and there's lake on either side of the entryway. And it's in particularly good shape. And has served that area from farm trucks and everything else over the years, Mr. Jones. But we're not changing that particular common access. That access has been there for many, many years. A lot of heavy stuff driven over it. We're not interested in changing it at all. And that will be one common entrance coming back to that particular property. That one common entrance coming back to two properties, assuming the split will be approved.
I guess my question or concern is if somebody then comes along and tries to chop the 10 acre up into 5 2-acre lots? Or is that just another?
Come back to, that would be a plat.
A plat.
Heard by the plan commission and would require variances.
Yeah. We looked at that, Mr. Jones. We looked at maybe just doing a plat, but even if we did the plat, we'd have the same 3-to-1 lot ratios, a variance. So that was my original thought, is to just do a plat with a common entrance. But when it appeared that we had the same requirements to come in front of this board for variances for 3-to-1 lot ratio, we decided just go ahead and do a split. Certainly a split is permissible because of the size of the acreage. You have to have enough acreage to be able to put septic. There isn't sewer out there, but 28 plus and 11 plus, plenty of room to go ahead and put legitimate septics.
Okay. Should we ask if there's any members of the public that would like to speak, comment? Steve, Jess, you guys got any questions or thoughts?
No, I really don't.
I have received some calls from some of the neighbors and sent them some of the information and explained to them what it was all about, and have not had any concerns raised. But I did have some calls, and when we sent our information out, we actually sent a copy of the survey itself showing the split and the narrative discussing it in extreme detail. And so in essence, we received a couple of phone calls and wanted to know. Actually, one of them just wanted to know where Jim and Carla were going. They weren't interested in the split. They were just perhaps a little nosy. I'm not sure.
Thoughts, comments, motions out there?
So at this time, we would approve it to have the drive shared for the future lot as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. I move the docket number 2021-09-DSB petition for development standard variance in order to allow a lot split of 39 plus or minus acres into lots of 28 plus or minus and 11 plus or minus acres, in which 1, both lots will not meet the lot width to depth ratio of 3-to-1. 2, one lot with existing structures exceeds the allowable roofed accessory square footage. And number 3, one lot with existing structure exceeds the maximum permissible height associated with accessory structure in the low-density, single-family residential zoning district R1 be approved based on the findings and based upon the staff report as presented.
Second.
Third,
Roll call.
Mr. Mundy,
Aye.
Mrs. Campins,
aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Thank you for your time, and it's nice to be back in front of you in person.
Wayne, you got off easy tonight. No staff reports?
We were prepared.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any other business?
No business that I am aware of. We certainly have some findings that we may ask Larry to sign while he's in the building before he leaves the building. And then we will work with the other members as time allows.
All right.
Great.
Anyone make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. We're done.
Third. Thank you.